Okay. Yeah, the subcommittee meeting ended at 4, so I was just giving those folks a second to jump on here.
Yeah.
Sort of players.
Frank. What's
Okay.
up with Frank today?
Sounds good. Kick this off at 4:02. I will click on record. And this is Thursday, December 16th meeting of the Fire Station Building Committee. This meeting is being recorded. And if there's any other persons present that are doing so, please notify the chair at this time. Thank you, Don. Okay, to the attendance. Stuff over here. David Singer. Here. I'm present. Butch. Mayor.
Here.
Present. Chief Strahan. I saw you pictured. Here. All right. Liz Gilman.
Probably not. En route
No.
to Indiana.
Yeah.
Yep.
Trying to avoid the wind, I'm sure.
Yeah. Carol Collins. Yeah. David Mascaratello.
I'm here.
Thank you. Steve Draculich.
Here.
Okay. Gene Wall.
Here.
Amy McMahon.
Here.
And Jen Stromstad.
Here.
Okay. Non-voting members. Laura Phelps. She's here.
Here.
All right, Laura. Marlon Warner. George Vanderlinder. I saw George.
Here. Yeah, sorry. Here.
Thank you, George. Fernando. Gary. Chief Haig. Peter MacGyver.
Present.
Greg Diefendorf.
Here.
Neil Joyce.
Here.
Roger.
Here.
Katrina.
She'll be on in just one moment.
Okay. Adam.
Here.
Dennis.
Here.
Ross. And Ed Jarvis. Yeah. Okay, we have a quorum.
Butch, I am on the call.
Okay,
This is
thanks.
Katrina.
Thanks, Katrina. Okay, where's my...
Butch, you also have a young lady named Megan Spratt on the call, who is
Okay.
part of our architectural team. And I've
Perfect.
asked her to join us just so she can see what's going on and stay caught up with the project.
Thanks, Dennis. Okay. Very good. Next item will be approve the minutes for Thursday, December 9th. I believe everybody got them mailed out to them.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Jean. Any further discussion on the minutes? Okay, seeing none. Back to the list. David Singer, how do you vote?
Approve.
I approve. Mayor?
I wasn't at the meeting, so I'll abstain.
Abstain. Chief Strahan?
Approve.
All right. David Mascaratello?
Approved.
Steve Draculich?
Yes.
Thank you. Gene Wall?
Yes.
Okay, Amy McMahon?
Yes.
All right, and Jen Stromstad.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, next item on the list is the project cost estimate discussion, Chico Ross. And I sent out, it was a rather big file, 24 pages of the schematic design cost estimate revision 1 draft a couple of days ago when I got it. Just sort of want to preface it by saying that this estimate is based on the design concept that we approved them to go out to price. Obviously, as they get into it. Um, the, um, the pricing can be somewhat different with different designs, and I think they'll talk about that, but I think Dennis would like to lead off and explain why it came in so high and what's going on in the market and what's going on construction-wise in the industry. I'll turn it over to Dennis and his team.
Thanks, Butch. First of all, I am really, really happy to see everybody on the call, that nobody fell over with a heart attack or stroke when they saw this. That's a very good sign. So what I'd like to say is, you know, don't put your heads down and cry. This estimate and any estimate on any project is a process, all right? What led us to the program, the design, the site, and everything that we put together has been a very long process. Estimating is absolutely no different. It's all part of the same process. It's just a continuation, you know, with money involved. So with that said, yeah, it was high, but we understand there's also places to go. And from our point of view, anything that we're going to show you, which we are going to show you some ideas, and we're going to ask for your opinions, are simply, they're not set in stone. They are things that will save money, that'll help us achieve the budget, and as little as humanly possible, they will not affect the operations or the response of the station, all right? The other thing is we have no intention of giving Greenfield just an ugly cardboard box to put on Main Street, all right? So, you know, as hard as everybody worked on the design, and I mean you, the committee, and us, the design team, and our consultants, all is not lost. We're making great progress. We've been working real closely with Butch and Neil and the entire design team. And as we go through this, I'm going to have some questions at the end for the committee to consider. And that's it, just to consider additional possible cost savings. So with that, let me tell you just a little bit of history so that you can understand this estimate. We all know the pandemic has done things to the entire marketplace. Anybody who's gone out Christmas shopping recently realizes that, you know, you can't get the hot toy because you got delivery issues. And I'll use a couple of 4 examples to just bring this home. But in every single line item throughout that entire estimate, plus 4 other additional estimates that we've had in the last, I want to say 2 months, right? In every single case, embedded in every single line item is uncertainty, delivery issues, non-availability of materials or labor or both, right? And the biggest uncertainty is, you know, what price increase is going to happen between today when we do the estimate and, you know, April when we're supposedly go out to bid. There is absolutely nothing worse in the construction market than uncertainty. So that uncertainty gets built into those numbers, right? They just are. I'll give you, for example, we were assuming that on the big roof over the admin and bunk area, we'd use what we call EPDM, or basically a rubber roof that's glued down, right? We got the cost of that rubber roof, and it was at least $10 a square foot higher than anything we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years, all right? Made absolutely no sense. So we talked to the estimators, and then we actually called roofing companies, the people that actually install these, and a company who actually makes them. And they told us that the adhesive is simply unavailable. You cannot find it anywhere. Fine. Well, we said you can still get the same EPDM roof, and we can screw it down with big plates and screws and everything. Talked to the same 2 companies, and they said that's great, except it's more costly because you can't get the screws and plates anywhere. So we said, all right, we're gonna call up a different company and talk about PVC roofs. Well, in the layering of the PVC, there's at least one or two of those components that you cannot get. And we said, all right, what about a good old bitumen and tar roof from the good old days? Same problem. So in actually talking to the real vendors and the real suppliers who do this, 5 roofing systems all have the same problem. Something in that system is simply not available. So when they bid and they put those numbers out there, all right, that inavailability, that's built into the number, all right? We talked to a block supplier, all right, same thing with aggregate. We talked to some other vendors and suppliers. It goes up and down the line, all right, regardless of what you're looking at. So unfortunately, just from a timing point of view, that's what we're looking at in the construction market. And you're being held hostage to something you simply cannot control. It's out there everywhere. And not only is it embedded in the numbers, when you look at below the line and look at the escalation number, that's the highest it's been in probably about 5 or 6 years, all right? God forbid you go to Boston, because in Boston, it's actually over 10%. So those are some of the issues, all right? So with those issues in mind, the uncertainty and the things going on, we have to find a way, we, the team, and you, the committee, that we can preserve the project that you want, that you expect, and that the fire department deserves. And we think we're coming close to that. So I've asked Adam to please have a couple of sketches on hand so that instead of talking about abstract ideas, we can actually see a few things. Some you won't like, some hopefully you'll pass muster, but we need to talk about all of them. So Adam, I'm gonna turn the screen over to you. And I think what we're gonna look at first is the plan.
All right.
Because we want to point out some areas that, yeah, we eliminated or changed a little bit that none of you have seen. I don't expect, yays or nays. What I do expect is just hear us out on why we did it, and then we'll talk about how we're going to decide what to do about it. So let's start over in the bays, in the Bay Area, because by far that's one of the most important operation and response areas. First thing we wanted to do was cut back those 2 bays to the right. Chief would have exploded. Neil told us absolutely not, under no circumstance. So we left those because operationally you need them. What we did do though is we took that radio room of about 200 square feet and we pushed it back into the building. And when we did that, at the back of that, we just pushed all the spaces back, if you will, and took the 2 pieces of equipment, which were basically trailers, and we're saying, can we move them outside just under cover, right? Now, again, I know the chief has not seen this. The fire department hasn't seen it. So it's just a thought.
I
At
just
this
saw a
point.
smoke cloud over there.
There we go. Is that better? So if you see in the blue up above the generator, and that's not necessarily the final spot, but whether it's there or on the other side of the parking, the idea was this actually reduces square footage. And that's always the first place we look. We took the door, the rear overhead door, and moved it, or actually eliminated it, put an exit door there, made the retaining wall a lot simpler. And then as we move back towards the admin portion, we removed all the paving and stuff on the patio and the expensive fencing and ramps, and just made a very simple egress door out of the kitchen. So we took that expense away. And then as we move all the way over, the biggie, because again, it doesn't give us anything for response or operation. The controversial one, we removed the museum. in doing so, you can see that long ramp, if you will. Adam, you show the ramp. Because that ramp now is quite a bit longer than the one we originally had indoors, it allows us, what is it, Adam, about 1'6" of additional height that we don't need. Saves on
14 inches.
Tremendous amount of cut and fill. Probably another $100,000 in site work there. So, you know, other than that, we lowered some volume and made a few other changes, which you'll see when we move to other views. But essentially, the station itself is still the same. So I think before I don't know, should we look at some of the elevations, or do people have immediate reactions before we go too far that they'd like to express?
Why don't you go through the whole thing and then we'll go back?
Yeah,
That's
how
fine,
many
George.
alternatives do you have?
I'm sorry?
This says alternative 1. Do you have 2 or 3 or?
Oh, I got ideas you're gonna hate, Mayor, so I'm
Okay,
trying not to go there yet.
all right. Well, you've made an enemy out of the chief. Let's see what you can go for next.
I knew it wasn't gonna be pretty. But I'm trying to protect my team, which is why I'm doing the talking, so you
Okay.
only have one enemy.
All right.
All right, again, I think let's start with the bays. All right. In general, as you can see, the shape is still the shape. We've taken out a tremendous amount of height. The bays all still work in terms of being able to tip the cabs. The only thing we didn't do was make it high enough for the fire department to actually put a vehicle on a lift and do maintenance. So that we did lose. All the storefront and glass and everything and the steep roofs are gone.
Mhm.
So just so you understand, as a committee, height in a building like this is about 75% of what square footage is. So if a square foot is worth $1, this is probably every foot of this is worth 75 cents. So it's a pretty significant saving. In order to keep the light in the bays, we're certainly keeping all the garage doors front and back as glass. And certainly on the back side facing the railroad, masonry is still very cost effective. We could introduce lots of glass block in there because it's just a mason doing masonry. Whether he uses, you know, concrete masonry units or glass block, the mason doesn't really care. He's just laying up masonry. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Back up just a smidge. Did you say you still have enough height there for them to put a engine on a lift, or no?
No, we do not. That is something that we lost when we lowered it.
Okay, that seems
Right.
important.
We still have all the training capability and the mezzanine and the height we need there. We have all the height in the bays to tip cabs, work on the beds of the trucks. It's simply putting them up on a lift. We don't have the height. That's one thing we did lose. The other thing we did, again, and when we eliminated all of the storefront glass, is all the windows now are the same window. They're basically, you know, very high quality Anderson or Marvin type punched window. So Adam, as you kind of want to move closer to Main Street, you can see the kitchen area. We've introduced some glass block over the window, you know, just to lighten things up. The bunk area, little bit of height, not much, but enough to save some money. And then obviously without the museum and the whole training area, we've changed the volume considerably, lowered it quite a bit, but it still exists as a training volume, still would have all the cross use as an EOC, community room, training, so none of those functions have been sacrificed at all.
Oh, okay.
If I left anything out, Adam?
I don't believe so. I think that pretty well covers it.
Oh, and materials. We found that the siding we were looking at, the cement board, was actually quite expensive. So we're using a lot more masonry, brick and block, because it's still cost effective. So we're actually increasing the masonry and decreasing that siding. Something we did not expect. But again, I think it has to do with availability, manufacturer. Again,
Did you reduce the number of windows there on that east side?
nope.
Okay.
No, and I'll add a
Still
couple
there.
of notes if I could, Dennis.
Yeah, please.
Within the wall section, since we were also finding that the insulation technique that we were trying to use in these walls was going to be more expensive than a tried and true wall assembly that we've used very successfully over the years. We have shifted back to that assembly with the masonry, with spray foam insulation. So it's just one layer. There's less labor involved. You just have one subcontractor who's doing that instead of multiple laborers at different times. So we simplified the wall construction pretty much all the way around the building, as well as that exterior material. And I do want to clarify, Dennis had said before, well, we always start looking at square footage. We really looked at the height first and the volumes and the materials, and only then did we look at the square footage of the building, again, because the program is paramount here. The functionality of this for the chief was what we had in mind. And we know that the bays, especially the smaller ones that are away from the railroad tracks, are important to keep those extra long bays for the future of the city and the fire department functions.
Yeah, another small thing, but worth some money is the roof on the training room facing Main Street would be made shingle as opposed to metal. So there are some other material changes like that. This is how far we've gotten. I think it may be time to get some feedback. I expect definitely some feedback from the committee on the museum, but let's hear what you folks have to say.
Dennis, can you just maybe continue what you might have changed internally, heat systems or any other kinds of systems? And then maybe we can go back to
Sure.
the beginning and with the questions and go forward.
No, you're all right, Butch. So in the apparatus bays, we have been assuming that there was going to be an epoxy floor, which is a system of overlaying several layers of urethane epoxies. That can be done anytime. It can be done a year from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, it doesn't matter. So we were looking at posing that as an alternate being something that the contractor can bid on, put a hard number on it, and if the budget allows when the bids come in, then the city can certainly select it. It's a big enough number, about $130,000, that we have to look at it. It's just too big a number not to look at. So that was one of the things. I think I had another one. Nothing in the HVAC yet, all right? We have ideas, and we also have some systems that we're going to look at structurally to get pricing on that we think could be, some pretty significant cost savings, but we haven't gone there yet. Again, I think most of what we're really looking at, which, we're trying to maintain in terms of materials, finishes,
Heating systems?
those kind of things.
heating systems?
The heating system right now is pretty much everything we've talked about as a committee. I do have a thought about the bays, but it's not been instituted yet. It's going to be one of those things I will pose to the committee. If you want me to do it now, I can do it right now.
Yeah, I think you should.
All right,
Kind of get it
so-
all out on the table.
All right, so currently in the bays, well, first of all, the building is all electric, you know, and there was a tiny bit of propane, I think, just for the generator. One of the major cost savings out there could be overhead radiant heat in the bays. There are tubes that run in the bays, they run, you know, across the bays in certain directions, and they still supply radiant heat, which is the best form of heat to supply. However, in order to do that, we would need propane, all right? But it would probably be somewhere in the $100,000 to $150,000 savings over in-floor radiant heat. However, when you do that, it's not like 10 years from now you can make that change. Once you have that radiant heat, it's radiant heat, and that's what you've accepted. So while it's an initial cost saving and a fairly significant one, you're accepting the fact that, you know, half your building is on propane and half your building is electric. So the whole living admin half would be, you know, electric, and the rest would be the propane. So that is a possibility that's out there. Other than that, we do have CES. Kate's been talking to them about any other possibilities or any other systems in the living admin side for HVAC. So far, I think what we've got is still fairly cost effective. The only thing, and it was never really part of the building, but we had asked for it as an extra, was a building management system, which means that, you know, Marlo can operate this building, or the chief can operate all the HVAC from home off their phone or their computer. You know, at $100,000, that's a nice convenience, but I don't think it's going to happen. So something like the building management system was eliminated before it ever happened. As far as the rest of the materials, you know, the walls, the paint, the block, lighting, ceilings, we have not changed any of that internally. They're all still high grade systems, you know, built to last, and, you know, built, you know, for abuse. As far as utilities going into the building, I think there's still some room in the site number. Neil and us agree that it's still high. I think it's just a matter of working out some of the assumptions with the estimator. Still think there's some money to be found in the site. There might be a little bit of overlap there. Kate, did I leave anything out?
I can't think of anything at the moment, Dennis. As you mentioned, I've spoken with Brian Hamill, and Derek Bride has also put his 2 cents in just briefly. If we were to have the committee consider some kind of change on the admin living end of the building for the HVAC system, they mentioned that it would be a complete switch from what we have designed to date together. It would be going to gas furnaces with AC coils, which is cheap but causes inconsistent temperature control, and it does not control humidity well. So there are some significant downsides to that type of change, which I don't think we're at the point where we need to put that on the table, but I did want to let the committee know we're thinking about the possibilities that we may have to consider.
All right,
It's just a question, but
for the committee's sake, just so you understand what all this means, we believe that we're in the $1.5 million range of savings, just with everything we've explained. That does not include the overhead radiant. So if you left everything in the floor the way it is, Putting back the little bit of square footage, the museum, the height, the materials, and just the things that we've done so far, we believe we're in the $1.5 million range, which we believe really puts us in striking distance to go find another $500,000.
Okay. All right, you ready for questions?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, anybody got any questions for the team on the changes? And I can't see everybody because oh, just speak up if, there you go.
I have a question for Dennis, but it's more a question for procedure. Dennis, you mentioned the windows, you were planning a Peller or
Anderson.
Anderson or whatever. Those types of windows do not need to be pre-qualified. If they're a fiberglass window or a wood window, we do not need to pre-qualify those. If it is a metal window frame, it needs to be pre-qual. So I would need clarification from you guys very quickly as to how you intend to specify the windows, so we get the RFQ correct.
It's gonna be
Right.
a metal window, wood on the inside, and we're specifically gonna be using probably the Eagle brand because it comes in masonry sizes and can be put in there very quickly and easily without a lot of framing and additional labor.
Right, so it's a wood, it's a metal clad wood window, just to be clear. It's wood, the sashes are wood, it just has a metal cladding on the outside for durability and maintenance.
So Laura, you can take that out of the pre-qual.
Any other questions by anybody? Sure, Jane. You're muted.
What's happening to the energy savings on this building? It sounds like they just all went out the window.
Oh, not at all.
Not at all.
We haven't, at this point, we haven't changed anything. We've changed absolutely nothing on the HVAC. And the bays are still the bays. We have not made that change yet, or, you know, and we won't until we get committee approval.
I would suggest if the volume of the building is reduced, that it will result in a reduced operating expense to the building long term.
Correct, that's, yep.
With no changes to the envelope in terms of the amount of insulation that's provided, we should see a improvement in the energy costs or a reduction in the energy costs based on the reduced volume.
I was going to say pretty much that, Neil, that in areas where we took away the curtain wall or storefront windows that were high up above the bays and at the training room, now that those are solid walls with masonry, whether it's glass block for the light or it's just block and you have insulation behind it, you have a more consistent or more thorough envelope of insulation. So as Neil was pointing out, that should be better in terms of energy cost for the operation of the building.
Actually, there was another thing, and again, it was one of those additions that really never made it past the first estimate, was the light wells that we had sprinkled around the roof. Again, at about $75,000 to $100,000. We were treating that more as an extra than a given. Once we had the price on it, we asked the estimator to just forget about it. And we'll take care of it with windows and glass block.
I think it's important to hear from the firefighters on what they just saw.
Dennis, I know the museum was an important aspect for both the committee and the fire group. Is it possible that the site lends itself either to a later standalone loan or a later attached somehow museum as we acquire money?
That's a great question. Certainly something, if that was important to the committee, and I'm sure it is, we would certainly like to take a look at that and see how that can happen.
Anybody else, chief?
Butch, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
Dennis and Katrina, I just heard you mention that the cityscape or training wall has been cut. Does that include all of the mezzanine training space?
No,
No, actually,
Training has not been cut.
I don't know. We looked at that, we adjusted it. All the training is still there. Did
What would
I
be the
understand your question
cost
correctly?
savings? I suppose so. What is the cost savings if we cut VRF?
Can you, I can't hear you. Cost savings for
What's
what?
the cost savings by cutting VRF and going with traditional heating methods?
that's what we have not had the estimator pursue just yet. But if that's something that allows the square footage of the building to go back to where it was in a previous presentation, that's a very serious step to take. And I do want to mention that it can have an effect on the future sustainability prospects of the building. I know that it's been important all the way through the project, even before we started drawing a line on the paper, that the infrastructure of making the city carbon neutral or net zero in the end is the goal. And taking this step with the building is a huge undertaking in terms of design, but then also getting it estimated and saying, is that worth this piece of space?
I
From
know
my
it's a lot to
perspective,
swallow, Chief and Peter and everybody on the fire department, but you know, in what we did, like moving those, you know, two pieces of equipment to undercover, for example. I know you've only looked at it for 15 minutes, but I mean, do you have a reaction?
Can you hear me first of all? Because this mic doesn't seem to.
Yes, we can, chief.
Okay, so my reaction is probably what you thought my reaction was going to be. Seeing this for the first time. The pieces of equipment that you're talking about outside cannot be outside. The boat cannot be in a untemperature controlled environment. So that boat we would have to cram into the apparatus for someplace. What is the overall height of the apparatus for?
Are you talking like from the lowest point to the highest point? I assume that's what you're asking.
I'm talking usable height in the apparatus bed.
So under the structure is what I would expect you to, that's what we're trying to answer here. Adam, do you have a
We,
dimension?
I can say that we aim for 16-foot clear in the primary apparatus bays.
And that's at the low end?
Yes.
So it gets higher from there. We know that when our standard approach is to have 18.6 under the structure for as a minimum, but here we need to get the building down so that you have a building.
And the rest of the interior, did I hear you shrunk some of it, or is it the same, or?
We reduced the ceiling heights in most spaces. So your bunk rooms will have an 8-foot ceiling rather than a 9-foot ceiling, for example, and brought the whole building down by about that 1 foot. We also lowered the ceilings in the training area. They're still fairly generous, but they are lower than they were before.
The training room itself has not been reduced.
That is correct.
Size has not been just the height?
I know this is probably going to be unpopular for especially Carol to hear if she's on, but I would think that maintaining the building, versus sacrificing space because of fuel efficiency, I think we need to take a look at that. I understand long-term sustainability, but we need a firehouse that's gonna be functionable and appropriate for a modern fire service. And so this is a lot to swallow. So, I'm sure I'll have more comments, but thank you.
I would also just like to clarify that we don't know that changing fuel sources would bring us back to that square footage. I would say it most likely would not at this point.
But we
So-
don't have the definition of that yet. That's not something that we've said to CES. What are those systems now? And given that to the estimator for them to say, this is our professional best guess at this time.
Yeah, the number has to be big enough to even bother to look at. I mean, if somebody comes back and says you're gonna save 50 grand, I'm just saying it's not worth it. We'll look elsewhere. But I do have a question for you, Chief. If we can find a way to get enough heat to preserve those two pieces of equipment and do just a very simple pre-engineered little garage out back, but have heat in it, would that solve the issue? Or do you want those things absolutely in the bay?
No, that would be a very effective alternative.
I think we can manage that and save quite a bit of money doing it. So I think we're gonna go in that direction.
So two things that obviously you probably expected me to be disappointed in. First one, obviously, is a museum. Now, that is not operational and that doesn't affect our operations, but a museum was something that was very important in this project. Even a condensed museum, it was important for the firefighters and for us. We have a lot of stuff that right now you're telling me I don't know what to do with. So that itself is challenging. The other part, and I'm going to try to appease the committee to find a different alternative, is the 4. I have talked to many firehouses that did not go with the 4 that they should have initially, and it cost them 10 times the amount to replace the 4 or add the 4 and the apparatus 4 down the road. Specifically, Butch, you'll remember East Hampton was at the time was about $10,000 to $20,000 to do. When they went to replace it, was over $150,000 to do. The 4 for the apparatus is one that I would hate to see get sacrificed. But that's my initial blush. Thank you.
Any other questions about any of the design changes? Oh, go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, hi. So I'm very sorry. I was late, and so obviously there's a lot of bad news going on. I'm very sorry. I'm kind of trying to piece it together, but it sounds like you went out for some estimates and the pricing was just so dramatically higher that it required all of these changes. Is that, or can someone just give me like maybe a quick sentence, please?
Yes. Material shortages, cost of labor, unavailability, volatility in the market, and just the uncertainty have driven up costs in the last 6 months.
Okay. Well, it's very unfortunate, and I'm very sorry to hear that. And I know this is very shocking, I guess. But one question I have, I don't know if it came up. I know with the library, we actually were expecting that, and in the end, we wound up actually saving money on a lot of things. But that was maybe 6 months ago that we went out to bid. So I guess I don't know if it's been talked about at all. Again, this just not being welcome news. Do you foresee? I mean, I know no one knows what's going to happen, but they're saying, starting in first, second quarter of 22, that things might start to, at least supply wise, do you think it might make sense to wait a little while instead of making all these cuts for this moment in time? And that even though it's not ideal to wait, that if we can get closer to the building that was designed, that it might make sense? Or at least try to, maybe we just do footings or pieces that we can do now where the price has, okay, I see a no.
So what happens, Carol, is this. All right, it's a double-edged sword. The longer you wait, the longer
Right.
escalation erodes your buying power. All right. So while the volatility may settle down a bit, your buying power is getting eroded every single day. Plus, as we know, because we heard it from the Fed, I think, yesterday or even today when the market jumped, they're looking at 3 bumps in the interest rates over the next year. So again, the city's borrowing power is going to get eroded also if we wait. Anything in a construction project that is phased, like doing the footings and coming back, will
Yep.
always cost more, considerably more, and increases your risk. Don't
Right,
want to
and-
go there.
I'll add to that the clock is already ticking. As soon as the chief moved his group out of the existing station into the temporary and started paying rent, that is our clock ticking. And I'll mention it now because it's important for the committee and our design team all together to make sure that we are trying to get to that bid situation sooner than later, not only because of the cost that we don't know further down the road and the rent that's there. We have to produce this in a very short amount of time. I'm sure those of you who worked on the library project know that it takes time for us to finish the drawings. You've seen conceptual schematic drawings of a project that we think can work. But in order for us to get to that finish line, we need to move forward. We don't have the luxury of waiting 4 months or redesigning over 2 months to get to another bid date. We have that clock ticking and we want to produce for you so that the fire station is what it should be for the department in the end and for the city.
Yeah, we're sandwiched in between 2 projects and the costs are going both ways at the same time. That is really the issue. You're going to pay for it on one side or the other, or we'll probably pay both, but go ahead, Gene.
Well, will adding alternatives, will making things alternatives give us the luxury of being able to play with the market a little bit? I mean, that seems to have been what we did on the library project, was adding things as alternatives.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, Jean, that is what Dennis was mentioning first about the floor finish, which the chief said, he's talked with other people. We don't want to make that an alternate. He doesn't want that as an alternate, but that's an example. And perhaps there is some option with, and I'm just throwing it out there, this is off the top of my head, a museum space could be an alternate. We've had success on other projects where a specific chunk of the building altogether as a piece can be bid out as an alternate. And if the dollars are there, it can be put on. But it can also be designed so that if the dollars aren't there today, but the dollars are there in 4 or 5 years, you can put it on then.
It appears to me that that might be a better alternative to waiting, since we have to pay for the temporary fire station.
Anyone else with any questions?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a great way for us to frame these decisions as alternatives. I know I'm the person who always complains about the front of the building, although I love the last version. But I get the reality of losing the museum. The little angled portico thing, just like it is just death to me. So, no offense. So you're deciding on the fly, but, so I think, something simple and, whatever can happen. I get the thing about the grade having to work out, but it just, it goes back to this problem of it having no front door, but having kind of a confused now side door. So that's, a thing. I'm just gonna be the person who says the thing out loud. I think, and I recognize this is the reality that we have inherited and been handed. But switching gears to this, this is preposterous that we're trying to, for a city of 18,000 people, have a modern firehouse, and frankly, our fire station serves the entire county to some extent, right? And so that we're trying to get this done for $10 million is just ridiculous. And I think everyone's done heroic work, including the firefighters just eating dirt to try to make this okay, and I'm sorry we're in this situation. I think that, frankly, we're coming at this from the scarcity mindset, and we're afraid of the city council, and we're afraid of people are going to complain, that we can't afford the debt service on something slightly more. And I just disagree with that perspective, but I recognize the political reality that we're in. So.
Steve, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, I just want to say that this is the reality I'm living every day. Every project I have is way, way over budget. We are in our second or third redesign to bring stuff down. We can't get rubber roofing. We hear rumors about which contractors have squirreled away roofing, knowing that things were changing. You can't get rigid insulation to go under the rigid roofing. You can't get. We're having trouble getting all the things that we talked about, and every time we come up with a new alternative, that ends a lot of times that ends up being one of the things that you can't get as well. We just had a reality where we were constructing security rooms out of metal studs with security screen, and we found out that it's actually less money to build them out of concrete block, reinforced concrete block. It's just, it's like, really? Something that was 3 times the cost before is now, so this is what I'm dealing with every day. And so that we're not alone. Everybody that is trying to put up a building right now is having those same issues. So while that's, I guess, not really any relief to us, there is a larger group that we're all sharing the pain with. I could look through and see all kinds. There's things here and there, and I could say, why are we putting spray foam insulation, in the walls, when I also know that you can't get rigid insulation. And so in another project, we're doing spray foam, which is twice the cost of rigid because you can't get rigid. And so these are the kinds of things that we're dealing with all the time. This is a real problem. This is a real issue, and we have to think that you can figure out what the percentage that we have to bring this cost down to, but it's a big number, and changing ceiling tile specs is not going to help. We really need to think in a bigger way about what these in order to bring these costs down. I mean, and I'll just say this: the idea of breaking pieces off as alternatives is a good idea. It's also a lot more work for the architect to do. So, thank you, Mr. Architect, Mr. and Ms. Architects, for helping us with that. But, you know, that's a possibility, but, you know, I mean, that's, you know, should we be thinking about a pre-engineered steel building for the apparatus bays? But I know, talking yesterday with a steel building company, that there's problems there too. You know, it's like, might be a less expensive solution, but we might not get it for 4 years. So you know, this is a real problem.
Mhm.
And I don't have anything encouraging to say, I don't think, except that we really have to think bigger, you know, about these changes in order to make the budget. So,
So, hearing Steve, I have a couple of questions. I'm sorry, Steve, were you done? I kind of cut you off. I'm sorry. Okay. I have a couple of questions. I don't know, does this mean, does it serve any purpose to go back to the design table and say, can we come up with a slightly different, I mean, I realize that's what you did, and you did the best you could with one we've approved. And, you know, it may be what we have to live with, but is there any advantage to looking at a slightly different design? That's one question. And if I understood the estimated amount of savings that you were talking about, you said it was $1.5 million. Does that mean then that we would need to add $1 million, let's say, to get back what we wanted, what was the original? Does that mean we have to add $1.5 million somehow?
Let me answer that.
I have the money tree out front, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So Mayor, let me answer that. Given the shape of the site, the nature of the operations and response that the fire department needs, and the way that it's arranged, right now, there is a very minimal amount of corridor, almost no wasted space. And we've looked at so many other designs to get to where we are, to get that efficiency and that flow, that I don't think the shape, the size, the efficiency, or the flow are going to change. But I can tell you this, we're looking at, and Steve, maybe this helps you, we're looking at some innovative ways to completely look at a different structure, if you will. All right. Now, it may or may not work out again. We may get stymied by availability or lack thereof, but at least we're looking at it. And believe me, if the stuff looks, you know, that we're looking at looks like it's out there, then we may change the entire structure of the building. So to kind of answer your question, Mayor, maybe the size, the square footage, the shape, the flow, I'd like to leave it alone, not because it's a lot of work for us, but I don't think it's going to ever get any more efficient than what it is. Right. In answer to your second question, if you got a money tree, please talk with it, but we don't. We know we don't. We still have a whole lot of ideas to look at. You know, like I said, the structural system, you know, and we haven't taken this back again to the estimators, you know, to verify that we think we're in $1.5 million, but we're pretty sure that's about the neighborhood we're in. So I'm not sure we need that additional $1.5 million. We're going to need something. I mean, it's not going to be 10 million unless we really chop this thing up. But whether it's going to be 11.5, I don't know. There's just too many other things we need to talk about, like, you know, this hybrid structural system, possibly some other materials and other ways to do things. So I can't really totally answer your second question yet.
Okay. I just didn't know what we were looking at because, you know, $1.5 million is a difficult number to
Yep.
make.
Yep.
I mean, I can go look for different ways to maybe find some money, but, additional money, but I think that's a big ask.
No, I understand,
Yeah.
you know, we've got to, first of all, we've got to see where we stand right now, and then see what that delta needs to be between what you think you might be able to get and where we think we can get, you know. And again, every time we do this, we keep bumping up against what Steve has just informed us about. You know, we think we got a great idea and find out, it's not available for 2 years or some such thing, so.
Well, we clearly don't have the 2 years or the 4 years or that. We have to work with what we've got, which is another reality that
Yeah.
we have.
And the other reality, just again, and it's one we're very sensitive to, you know, if we changed, for example, not that I want to, but if we changed the entire HVAC system, all right, and we build you guys a 50-year building, you're now stuck with that for 50 years. So the long-term cost of that decision, in the end, is not a great decision. Right?
Yeah,
So
can I
we
just,
have to look at that also.
Sure. Jen?
can I ask, is there any way, and I know that I don't want to make you give us numbers that we're going to hold you to right now in this extremely abstract phase of planning, but you know, for us to look at the side-by-side costs of, you know, the debt service on the $150,000 that we would save on doing a, you know, HVAC system that's not so efficient versus those operating costs annualized, you know, over that 50 years. Because I really think that's an important part of this discussion for people to understand when we save, when we are penny wise and pound foolish, that is still taxpayer money we have to spend year in and year out, in addition to knowingly murdering the planet. So.
Right, and I just want to clarify, Jen, I think what I may have heard you just say, that the cheaper system would be inefficient. It would not be inefficient. It would be not proper for future sustainable desire for the community. That's what I was trying to say before, so I apologize if that was not clear. Cheap, yes. Efficient, yes, but not providing the control and the temperature and the comfort that makes it a great living and working space. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Right. Yes, Carol.
I just pulled up the energy model that we got from CES, and to confirm that the lowest upfront cost was the all electric system. So in addition to the operating costs going up, if we go to propane, or which is really the only other option, or I guess there are others, but the other thing I just wanted to mention is there are incentives that we'll get from the utility company. You know, it's not going to be massive, but that is something else that we're not going to get if we switch to something that's not as efficient. So that I've already been in touch with them and I'm working with them. And once we get a little more firmed up, I can get a ballpark of what that amount will be.
You're talking the incentive amounts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Chief?
Yeah, Dennis, I'd like you to explain something to the public that's listening. 3 months ago, when we sat down and we first looked at this design, it was being designed for the budget that we have. Can you explain to the general public that's listening out there what has happened? I know we hit it at the beginning, but really emphasize that things have dramatically changed within the last 3 months that were unforeseeable,
Marcus?
if you wouldn't mind.
I don't mind at all. So when we were working with the committee and designing this building, we knew and we all heard, hey, you know, can't get this, can't get that. But it was not, you know, up front and in front of our face yet. All right. It was out there with some materials. All right. And we heard about it. When we actually started physically getting estimates on other buildings, we started seeing the reality of what people were talking about, but we started seeing it in the construction industry. All right. It wasn't there 6 months ago, because I can tell you 6 months ago, we got some bids that were lower than the estimates. All right. We got them. All right. And we took them, and their buildings are being built. But within the last, 3 to 4 months, we've seen that whole thing turn around. All right. Those contractors are no longer bidding underneath, or we don't think they are, because they're facing the same reality you're facing. All right. They can't get stuff. They're hitting delays. Their construction schedules are stretching dramatically, and they're not getting paid for it. And this has hit them, right in the middle of a building project. If there's any upside whatsoever, and this is not to sound, for whatever the word is, but at least we are facing this now before we have gone to bid and find a contractor who's going south because of it. So we're facing the reality now. It's not much concession to you, but it's happening, and thank God it's happening now. It's very recent in the marketplace.
And can you reiterate one thing too, for the general public, that I think is an important message? Other than the museum, which is non-operational, and with the changes that we'll make to the 2 items that will go outside instead of inside, we have not lost any operational space or any operational changes other than that. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And we have not even shrunk, for example, a bunk room. All right. There are NFPA minimums for a bunk room. Are they comfortable? Not at all. But it is a minimum. We have not gone there at all. You folks live and operate in this building, and we need to maintain your comfort, your safety, and the ability to do what you do and adapt to it in the future, because who knows what the future is going to bring. So we have not shrunk the bays 1 inch. We've not taken away a single PPE locker. We've not done any of that. So again, in deference to what the mayor had brought up, the shape, the size, the layout, the efficiencies, I don't really want to touch that. So we're going after other things. Height, what can we do on the site? Maybe materials, expensive items like all that storefront glass. Those are the places we're trying to go.
I feel that way about the HVAC system too. We want these men and hopefully women someday to be as comfortable as possible. They lived a really long time in a very uncomfortable situation, and it would be really ridiculous for us to put in a less comfortable heating system, which is what I understand you're talking about in terms of an alternative. So, I mean, if something changes in the world of heating systems, or Carol can come up with something that gives us some substantial savings in some way, then great. But I think we need to, that's an important thing, really is.
Yeah, I think, that we should definitely have a premium system there. We've put a lot of money into the police station and that system over and over again, because it wasn't a quality system. And so it's cost us a lot in the long run by not having a first-rate system. Can you kind of lay out the schedule going forward here? Are you just going to do a redesign of the changes you make and present it to us in the very, very, very near future for us to vote on, so that Neil can start his process of starting to pre-qualify? I know he wants to put on the central register and advertise in the paper.
Boom. We forgot to put have you squirreled away materials as one of those questions on there.
Yeah. Did you do that?
That's a good one.
Going back and getting a question changed.
They still have to have the lowest price on bid day, Mayor.
Oh, okay.
So,
Squirreled
Butch,
materials probably come at a premium.
I'll try to answer that schedule question. And in the very near future, if there was the possibility for the committee to meet next week, that would be my desire. Whichever day it is, whether it's Tuesday or Wednesday, our
Wednesday's a half
offices.
day here.
I'm sorry.
Wednesday's a half day here. Not, I
Okay.
think, I'll check.
Okay. So
I'll look at it.
at that rate, I would
Maybe I will.
suggest that we meet next week so that, and we will provide the PDFs of the plan and the sketchy elevations that we provided for everyone to look at. And again, we need a decision to move forward and try to keep that schedule of being out to bid in April. If we cannot come to a consensus on that, it will delay the project going out to bid. And that could be as much as a month, depending on how long it takes for us to really get to a decision on this. It could be more. And I'm for your sake, we're trying to do our best to keep that to a minimum.
Okay.
Mayor, is the city
David?
open and operational between Christmas and New Year's?
After Christmas and before New Year, yes. And,
Okay.
and I think it's actually Thursday that's the half day. I kind of spoke up a little soon. But I have my schedule actually, come to think of it, right here.
Yeah.
David Singer?
I'll let Peter go
Go ahead.
first, but I do want to say something. Thanks. Peter, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't see Peter, sorry.
That's okay. So I have a couple questions. I'll try to keep them short. The cost estimate that was sent out, that is based on the original design, not these redesigns.
That is correct.
Okay, so in the budget that has been presented throughout from Neil, our construction budget is listed at $10.1 million. In the location summary of your cost estimate, it has under that figure. And then the margins and adjustments make up the variety of overages. What exactly are we looking at that is over budget?
Oh, you're talking about the contingency?
I'm talking about anything above and beyond that $10 million. In the estimate, it says Greenfield Fire Station, $8,576,185. That's under 10 million. So why are we looking at so many cuts?
If you look, I believe, and I don't have the document in front of me, so I apologize, but I think that number did not include the site work. And the site work
The site
was a
work
large
is listed
number.
at
That's an
1.4
extra million, almost $1.5 million.
And all of those other line items are considered in the cost. The contingency is something we have to include at this point. All of those other percentages,
Escalation.
escalation, all of those numbers that you see added on to that are fairly significant. All of those numbers are included in the number that we included in the cost of the building and affect how we hit the number that Neil has in the budget.
So I guess my question might be to Neil then. The general conditions, bonds and insurances, overhead and profit, design and estimating. Where are those otherwise estimated in your budget?
Peter, those were inclusive in the 10.1 million.
Fantastic.
It is highly, and forgive the informality, it is highly a coincidence that the $10.1 million number that's in our budget is the same as the estimated net cost summary that's in Dennis's estimate. That is purely a coincidence.
Okay, then I have one follow-up question to that. We're sitting at $13 million and the estimated cuts are 1.5 million. So how are we making up 1.5 million?
That is, that's where we're gonna start looking at things like, what can we do on the site? What innovative structural systems that are available or out there? Are there other materials we can be looking at? And is there anything we can do, and this is a big one, is there anything we can do in the way we actually design the building that cuts the time frame down for a contractor building the building? For example, every month that we can make this simpler to build, the contractors, all those things you had mentioned, like profit, overhead, contingency, all those numbers start to shrink dramatically for each week, month that we can pull out of there in terms of simplicity and ease of construction. Those are the things we're looking at.
So 1.5 is the cuts that we've made, and 1.5 is stuff that we have to fund. That's
This is all plus or minus, but yeah, that's approximately where we're at.
Okay, thank you.
Along that line, I'll just ask this question. I know we had the city help us on the temporary, which saved a lot of money. Is there an area in which the city could be helpful if they can and are available to be helpful to save money? And if so, would the savings be worth even talking about? Maybe Dennis?
You're asking me?
Yes.
I would love to see city help. I don't care where we get it on the site, but I can't take that into account until, Marlo and his group say yes, no, or maybe. Do we have the time? Do we have the budget? Can we do it? Where does it fall in our schedule? My answer is, yeah, you bet. Let them at it. But that's a whole discussion I can't rely on until those folks and the mayor and anybody else who's involved has that discussion first.
Wait, we have had that experience, Butch, on a local project here where the mayor had DPW, their plumbing crew, their HVAC crew, they were out on the project, and that saved them quite a bit of money. So for a project that ended up being, and I'm trying to remember the square footage, it was maybe 15,000 square feet in the end. It was a 1.5 million, but that was an addition renovation. So they said I had something to start with. At any rate, the point is, yes, that can help, if that's possible.
Okay. Chief, you had your hand up? Chief, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did, Butch. So, at the beginning of this, you said that there were multiple, design things you were gonna show us, different alternatives. Have we seen them all, or? You said there were
No,
other.
and I'm not going to show them to you because A, they're controversial. B, I don't want to use them. And C, it's Plan Z. So if we got backed into a corner and had absolutely no choice, yeah, I'd drag it out and show it to you. I have no intention of doing that now.
Okay. David?
Thank you. So Peter kind of started to discuss the things that I was thinking about. So it sounds like we were shown a rendition. That rendition will cost $13 million. We've seen a second rendition, and I'm guessing that the rendition we saw today will cost $11.5 million. I guess I don't understand what we're going to continue to do. I mean, either we have to get more money or we have to shrink and change the fire station. So, number one, I think the committee needs to kind of figure out what their plan is along those lines. And secondly, help me understand. So if you're going to show me something at the next meeting, will the price tag on that sketch be $11.5 million because you'll make what you showed us into a more formal drawing? Or, and if that's the case, what have we really, again, I'm saying, I guess I should say ahead of time, thank you so much for all your hard work. And I do totally understand the conundrum that we have. So I'm only asking you the question to get us focused as a committee, not to lay a trap for anybody or anything like that. So let me just put that out, my intentions. If you show us an $11.5 million building, a change building, what are we going to do with that? I mean, don't we really have to have, I mean, this is how my mind works. Don't we need to have kind of a basic discussion about how we're going to proceed with this so that we understand what direction we're heading so we can get there rather quickly rather than have meeting after meeting after meeting where we're shown something and then somebody says they like this and somebody says they won't give up that. And then, I mean, there's an equilibrium point somewhere where the firemen need to have what they need. And, you know, what's that number? And while I understand that you can change that number through imaginative design processes, which I'm looking forward to hearing about, at some point we have to hear what that number is. And we have to figure out if that number means that we actually have to go and find new sources of revenue. I have no intention of harming our firemen and of giving them something that's less than they deserve. On the other hand, if there's ways, if we don't have to be extravagant, and I don't think that's even part of the formula here, but whatever the adjective is, then let's do the hard work and get that down. But at some point, we're going to do all that hard work, and we're going to get down to the equilibrium point. And my guess is it's going to be more than 10.1 million. So can we just accept that that's the case and, you know, just have this hard conversation and the public can witness it and the city councilors, if they wish to start attending our meetings, can witness it and everybody can witness it. This is out in the open. This is what we need to do. And we need to get this community together to appreciate that we're acting in good faith. We need to protect the firefighters. But let's talk about it in real terms. I don't feel like we're quite there. Saving $1.5 million is a good message, but there's still a bad message, which is we need another $1.5 million. And I could see from the firemen's response that I don't know how much further they can tolerate us going down. So that we have to. This has to be done. I don't know the answer. I'm not experienced in this, as I've said before, but between Dennis and your crew and Neil, we need some guidance. So I'd appreciate it. Before we leave this meeting, I'd like that guidance to be expressed. Thank you.
Well, I seem to
Dennis,
be
are you
there-
saying,
I'm
are you
sorry,
saying
go
by
ahead.
next week, when you come back with sort of the redesign, you'll be coming back with a different price point that's closer to our budget?
I'm not sure by next week we're gonna have that, which is why I asked you if you're open, you know, the week after. The estimators need some time. We're gonna ask them to swallow a lot of different information very quickly. So I'm gonna need their help. I know we're bantering around numbers, $1.5 million, $1.5 million. $1.5 million is my gut feeling, and my gut feeling is usually pretty good when it comes to numbers. All right. So whether it's $1.4 million, $1.6 million, I can't honestly say. What I will tell you this, David Singer, because you bring up an excellent point, and because I seem to be the cowboy in the black hat giving the bad news. But to go from, and I'm just going to use the numbers we're bantering about, 11.5 to 10.1, I can absolutely guarantee you are not going to get the station you want. The city won't get it, the firefighters won't get it, we won't get it, and nobody's going to be happy. Because to make that last leap, the only way you can do it is shrink the building significantly. Neil, I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm sure you would probably agree at this point, you know, changing tile and, you know, ceiling tile, it ain't going to get you there. It's square footage at that point. So David, I
2,400
appreciate
square
you bringing
feet.
that point up. It's a tough point to face.
I'd just like to add to that point. I'd like the committee to be cognizant that when we started this at the end of a feasibility study, we were at 24,000 plus for this facility. We've already taken 4,000 square feet through design optimization and everything else out of the project and still delivered the program that's required. So You know, the saying is you can't get blood from a stone. I think we're pretty close to, you know, we don't really have the square footage to give. If the museum goes for lack of programmatic necessity and response necessity, I would say that we've skimmed the apple about as tight as we can get at that point in time.
David M., I think you had your hand up, didn't you?
I did. And there's a lot of comments that I agree with that everyone said. I want to remind folks in all the public that's on the call is that, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, I don't remember the date, we were sitting in front of the city council and there was a proposal for a $75 million fire station, which we all know is outrageous and ridiculous. And that's why it never went through. All right. Not that there was a hard work from individuals, but we're talking about a fire station for our community. We can shave 2 million. Fine. It will satisfy the public. But we need to give the fire department what they need and what they deserve. They support all of us. They're not supporting strangers or people in some other town. They're supporting Greenfield. And we're talking about a couple $1 million, which to me is nothing. And I know the public's going to go crazy with that statement. It's our tax money. Well, it is your tax money. But we all, as a public, need to invest in our town. Look at the shape of the old fire station. Look at how long they lived there and they worked out of that condemned, asbestos-filled, storage-backed-up building. I know people are going to go, see, I told you, you were right. They don't know what they're talking about. They're over budget. I always knew it was going to happen. And everybody's going to go off and pat themselves in the back. We need to invest in this fire station as the public, whether we have to do fundraisers, or whether we have to go back to the council and ask them for more money, or whether we have to get grants. This is what we need to do as a community for all of us, not the individual person. We all need to get off the high horse, the public and everybody else, and come together and support this. Period. There's no exception. I know we need to be frugal with our money. I know we need to cut back, but we're all in this issue with COVID. The example I'll use is I'm involved with a lot of security work across the country. I design a lot of rooms in a lot of buildings that use bulletproof walls and glass. 3 months ago, a piece of bulletproof glass was $25 a square foot. It's now $150 a square foot. That's just one little example of what we're in. All of us are in this situation. So don't come back to the council and blame the architect or the council that people didn't do their hard work. We're all in this issue together. It's not going to get any better. If anything, for the next couple of years, it's going to get worse. But at the bottom line is that we need a fire station and we need to invest back into our town with everything, not just the fire station. People that live in a town need to invest in the town. It ends up being a better town and we end up being a better people for it. I apologize if I sound like I was ranting. Thank you for the time.
Ditto. Okay, anyone else? All right, so just to get back to David Singer's question here, so we can really have an answer for what we're going to do next week, or what we're going to see and how we're going to proceed. How do you see that unfolding, Dennis?
I think we do have to formalize the changes we've made, at least enough for the committee to fully understand them. Certainly for the estimator to know every place we've gone, and I think that can be more of a conversation with the estimators and sketches and drawings and back and forth work. Certainly, I would appreciate if the city could, talk to Marlo and see if there's any space there for us to look for any, work or any savings, clearly. We will look for internal efficiencies in the building, and I think we will look at some other structural systems, but we are at the, squeezing the blood out of the stone. We're there, all right? I absolutely agree with everyone and do not in any way, shape, or form want to cut back on any of the square footage or comfort or safety or anything of the well-being of the firefighters now and in the future. I just absolutely, it goes against my religion. I won't do it. So does that mean more money? Probably. However, we've never had a pandemic or a supply chain issue like we've had. And like I said at the very beginning, when I opened up my talk, that supply chain issue, those unknowns, the cost that David Muscatello just brought up is embedded in every single line item on that estimate. And it's nothing, it's not Greenfield's fault, it's not our fault, it's nobody's fault, it's just there. It's what it is today. All right. And as David just brought up, you know, it's everywhere. I can tell you, we just had a supplier send out their newsletter, just so we're aware, that a truckload of material 1 year ago for them was $3,000 to go from California to New York. That exact truck with the same driver and the same material is $30,000. That's just shipping. So that's what we're facing. We're all facing something we cannot control.
Okay. A question for the mayor then on the budget. If next week we approve the design changes and the budget's $1 million or $1.5 million over, how do we proceed from there? I mean, we have to get to a point where we approve a budget. If the budget's over, we have to get to a point where Neil can put out his, request for proposals and bid qualifications and move that piece forward. And if we don't have the money, it's all for naught, really. And if we don't have a process to get the money, and that's a tough question. That's a tough question for me to ask you, but
Well, I'm not prepared to answer that tonight, but I will have an answer by next week.
okay, fair enough. Yes, Jane.
I think that Neil and Dennis need to tell us when they will have final figures on what this reiteration of the budget will cost. And then we invite the council and the public to come to that meeting and listen to it. And then we go forward. If next week we're still in that fuzzy, airy-fairy stuff, it seems like a waste of time. That we need to have a final figure. If we want this type fire station for our firemen, which I think this committee agrees that we do, we need to know what it's going to cost with every slash in the budget that you can do, and we invite the world to come to the meeting.
So,
The question for Dennis along those lines. I'm sorry, a question for Neil. We can't actually bid a project unless we actually have the budget to do it. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Not entirely. You cannot sign a contract.
You can't sign.
You cannot fully fund. But you can bid it, and you can note in the bid documents that it is subject to final funding arrangements by the city.
An important piece. All right.
Okay.
Yes, Jay.
So following that forward, Butch, theoretically, we could bid the project and take the bid price with all contingencies and everything else included back to council and ask for an adjustment in our budget based on a bid in hand. That's one alternative, as opposed to speculating where the market may be and taking it out of sequence and doing it now.
And that would move the project forward.
It's just an alternative way of doing it. And then, of
Okay.
course, the risk is you get all the way through bidding and the funding doesn't come through.
Right.
Right? So that's your risk. You've got a completed set of documents. Bids come in high and project gets shelved, or it gets additional funding, or one way or the other.
Okay. Chief.
Yeah, I just want to make one last comment from my side. This is pretty difficult. I think handled. But I am grateful that we have the professional team of Neil and Dennis and his crew to help us guide us through this. So I think people are disappointed, but I don't think anybody is disappointed with our project team. So I just wanted to say that. The last thing I'd like to say is that when you come back from a design, can you come back with a different design for the front entrance? Thank you.
So I'm still confused. Are we talking about a meeting next week? Or are we talking about a meeting the week of the 27th?
27th?
Okay.
I think we do need that time to speak with the estimator in order to get the feedback that we're all talking about. I think that's reasonable.
Go ahead, Carol.
I just wanted to throw out a suggestion. I've been looking through the line item estimate that was sent out. I already see a few things that, like for instance, on the library project, we did take out, for instance, lighting controls. So I don't know if it makes sense to maybe have the pertinent department heads or parties take a look and see if there are things that we already can remove without it compromising the project at all, because it's just not the way, like you mentioned the BMS earlier, Dennis. I don't know. I think George is on the call. I don't want to put him on the spot, but I think that might be something we could discuss or possibly remove, and definitely the lighting controls. And that's a pretty significant, it's a chunk of change. So if there's anyone, anyway, just a thought I wanted to put out there that maybe we could push that along and work with you guys directly before the next meeting to see how that might bring things down.
Anything you can do, Carol, like that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, whoever's, Butch, if you're listed as the host, is it possible that you mute whoever is listed as call-in user 2?
Oh, yeah. Caller user 2. Oh, yeah.
I believe you're able to remotely mute people.
Okay, is there any more questions on that piece? So we'll plan to schedule for the 27th at 4 o'clock. Okay. Next time on the agenda is the subcommittee had their first meeting today before this meeting, the Pre-Qualification Subcommittee. I don't know if they want to give us just a little report on their startup and what they went through.
Chair Butch, I'll be happy to do that. We did meet as a subcommittee this afternoon. We discussed the RFQ, the request for qualifications for both the filed subbidders and the general contractors. We came up with a point distribution structure for the various evaluation categories. We discussed the overall time frame for the distribution of the RFQs when they would come back to the city. Those are largely the same dates as we had shown the committee last week, only the dates translated out 1 week. So we're advertising Wednesday of next week. They'll be out until roughly January 20th. And we will come back with a recommendation based on completed pre-qualification to this committee on or about the first or second week in March. And then we will notify the contractors of their pre-qualification status in anticipation of bid documents in early April. So generally, that's the theory, that's the sequence, and that is the direction that we are poised to head in.
Okay. Very good. Any questions on that by anybody?
Peter or Greg, did I miss anything? I think they left.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you missed anything. I think that was, did we touch on structuring of the committee?
We did not, but I'd like to congratulate Steve Draculich. You were voted the unanimous choice for subcommittee chairman.
What did I
Yep, good man.
Yeah. In absence. I mean, I have to say, and I'm not sure how I missed it. I'm just struggling to find out that there was even a meeting, to be quite honest.
That's okay. I didn't know it either.
Yeah, okay, so,
I have an excuse.
yeah, so,
I think I had it sent out. I told Caitlin to send it to everybody on the committee, so.
when was it sent?
On the same time the same time she sent out the regular meeting.
Okay,
We were on top of each other.
okay,
Welcome, Steve. You're our fearless leader.
yeah, great.
Okay. Budget update, Neil? Anything?
Ouch.
But we have not made any additional payment requests to the city. So there is no change as of the budget from memory. I think we had expended roughly 2.5 million to date.
Okay, any questions on the budget by anyone? All right, temporary fire station update. Chief, do you have anything for us?
Yeah, estimates to do 13 have come in way high. So we've made some major changes to that. Nothing real significant where it's going to affect our operation up there. But we should be very well under budget with the changes that we've made. So.
Okay, any questions for the chief on that? Seeing none, we've reached the happy time of adjournment. Is there a motion? Second?
Second.
Okay. Where'd my sheet go to go down the list, folks here? All right. David Singer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Butch votes yes. Mayor?
Yes.
What else do I have there? It went on the floor. Chief?
Yes.
David M?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
And Jean?
Yes.
Amy? Amy? And Jen?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm on the phone now.
Okay, okay, thank you, everybody. See you on the
Thank you all.
27th.
Thanks for your time.
To
Great job
everyone.
So
tonight.
that's
Thank you,
Santa
everyone,
for
that
$1,500,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right.